Okay. On today's video, guys, I'm going to show you how to find the missing side of a right triangle using Pythagorean theorem, but having the answer in simplest radical form. So the first thing that we're going to do is, I know I'm going to be using a squared plus b squared equals c squared, so I am going to write my equation a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Then I'm going to look at my triangle, so we're going to work on problem number 1 for now. I am going to make sure that I label correctly A, B, and C. Remember that A and B will always be the two sides that are touching the 90-degree angle. So I'm going to label it A, I'm going to label it B, and then C will always be the side that does not touch the 90-degree angle. I also know it's going to be the C because it's the longest side. It's my hypotenuse. So the next step is going to be to substitute for every variable in my formula. So I'm going to replace the A with the square root of 26. I'm going to put my plus sign, then I'm going to replace the B with the variable x squared. Then I am going to replace the C with the number 12. Make sure that every single time that we're working with Pythagorean theorem, we're going to be squaring our numbers. So if I put my calculator, I'm going to use my calculator now, and I will be putting in parentheses the square root of 26. I'm going to close parentheses. I'm going to close parentheses again, then I am going to square it. I'm going to press enter and my answer is 26. So here I'm going to put 26 plus, I cannot put x in the calculator, so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring it down, x squared. The next thing I do, I put 12 squared in my calculator, so that's going to give me 144. Next step is going to be to subtract the 26. Remember, we want to leave the variable x by itself, so I need to subtract from both sides my 26. That leaves me with x squared equals, we go to our calculator and we put 144 minus 26. My answer is 118. Second step, remember I need to get rid of the exponent. So to cancel an exponent, opposite to that is taking the square root. So I'm going to take the square root. It cancels out here, so I have x equals, then if I put the square root of 118 in my calculator, it's going to give me a decimal. I'm going to show you really quickly. So I get a decimal of 10.86278049. I do not want my answer in decimal, I want it in simplest radical form. That means leave it as a square root. So once I have the square root of 118, I am going to try and find the simplest form of this radical. So what I do is, remember in class I showed you guys how to separate the numbers, so I'm going to try to find two numbers that multiply to 118. If I get my calculator, I can always try and find the multiples that way. 118, I can divide that by 2, that's always the easiest number to do. I get a whole number, so I have 2 times 59. I can multiply 2 and 59 to make 118. Now, there is nothing else I can multiply to form 2, so that's a prime number. 59 is also a prime number. Therefore, I cannot simplify anymore. There is no pair-side form, so my answer is just going to stay as x equals the square root of 118. Problem number 2, we're going to do the same thing. I'm still going to be finding the missing side. So I'm going to use the same formula. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Step 2, I'm going to label my triangle. I know that A and B are going to be touching the 90-degree angle, so I label them A and B. My C is always the biggest side and does not require to touch the 90-degree angle because it's the hypotenuse. So I'm going to substitute now. Instead of A, I'm going to use the 7. I'm going to put a squared plus the B is going to be x squared. The C is going to be the square root of 100 and 100. Let me do that again because you can't really see it. So I'm going to erase it, and now we're going to put the square root of 145 squared. When I put that in the calculator, I'm going to change color because it's really hard to see with the pink. So I'm going to do this in black. So I'm going to have 49 plus x squared equals 145. Remember, it's not because it's just 145. What I do is I put it in my calculator. If I put parentheses, square root of 145 squared, it's going to give me 145. So I did not just make up that number. I put it in my calculator and it gives you 145. Okay, remember, I want to leave the variable by itself. So minus 49, cross this out, bring down the x squared, equals, and we're going to do this really quick in the calculator, 145 minus 49. That gives me 96. Okay, now I'm going to take the square root of 96 so that we can cancel the square root on the x. We're left with x equals the square root of 96. If I put it on my calculator, it's going to give me a decimal. Okay, there it is. I do not want decimals, so I'm going to try to simplify this radical as much as possible. So I'm going to find two numbers I can multiply to form 96. I think if I divide by 3, good, so I get 32. So my multiples, oh, that one's really hard to see, so let's try red. Good, better. So I can multiply 3 times 32, and that's going to give me 96. 3 is a prime number, so I can stop right there. Now I am going to try to simplify 32 as much as possible. So I definitely know that if I divide 32 by 2 is going to work. So let's try something else. Good, 8 and 4. So I can multiply 8 times 4. Remember that if I already broke down 32, I am going to scratch it off. Now I can reduce 4. I can still reduce 4, and I can have 2 and 2. That's the simplest form. So I scratch out the 4. Then I can also reduce the 8. That can come out to 4 times 2. And I can reduce the 4 again into 2 times 2. Now it's time to make our pairs. So we're going to make the pairs. We're going to make our pairs now. So we have one pair of 2's. I have another pair of 2's right here. And that's it. I have a 2 and a 3 that do not have a pair. So my simplest form of this radical is going to be, remember that your pairs go outside. I have one pair of 2's, so a 2 goes outside of the house. Another pair of 2, so goes outside of the house. I draw my little house, and inside the house I have a 3 and a 2. So inside the house I'm going to have 3 times 2. I'm running out of space, guys, so bear with me. So if I multiply Always everything outside of the house, so that's going to be 2 times 2, so that's 4. Keep the house, and I'm going to multiply everything inside. 3 times 2, so that gives me 6. My simplified answer should be 4 and the square root of 6.